Good morning, Cover One Golf audience. I'm Tilt Money, joined today by Chris Kepner, and we have an interesting show for you lined up today. We're going to be talking about golf destinations, and when we talk about golf destinations, it can be anything from like making a big trip to a course that you want to play, courses that you have played across the country or even across the world, or maybe even just trips that you've taken to, more, golf centric locations in the country like Myrtle Beach and places like that. And in a second, I'm going to pass it over here to Chris to show you something he's been working on.
Hey guys, so here's a map that I've been working on of different golf course destinations around the country, and this is by no means meant to be exhaustive at this point. I'm actually looking for some help to fill it in. So, if you've got some favorite places that you've been to or that you really want to go to, throw them in the chat or in the comments. It would be really helpful. So, um, like for example, I really want to make it someday to TPC Danzante Bay, which just looks beautiful. I don't know if you guys have seen before, but this is a course that's right along the ocean, kind of like Pebble. But yeah, and you can see kind of like my you know focus so far has been mostly on the East Coast. Where I'm
Mhm.
about the Naples area, which had the fortune to play earlier this year. There's a bunch of courses down there. We'll talk about Myrtle Beach, like DT was saying. There's your club right there, Prestonwood. uh, but yeah, and as we start, I'm going to give it back to DT in a sec to kick us off on the first destination. But one point that I wanted to make as we're going along here is almost anywhere can be a golf destination because there's so many great courses around the country. And we probably won't talk about it too much today, but maybe on another show we'll get into Western New York, which has a bunch of great courses. Actually, some of the guys in the Cover One Discord helped me fill in the Rochester area recently, which I haven't played any of these yet, but there's a ton of courses in the Rochester area. Obviously, I've played a bunch of the Buffalo courses before. I don't have this is again not an exhaustive list by any means, but Cleveland, Ohio, there's randomly some nice courses near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Um, Dauphin Highlands in particular was really nice. So anyway, I mean, we're going to talk about some really nice places, but we might need to do another episode down the line to fill in more destination golf because there's just so many great places to play. And with that in mind, I'll kick it back to you, DT, to start us off with the first destination that you want to highlight.
Yeah, no, even before we get into that, I mean, AQ makes a really good point here about Michigan has a sneaky amount of world-class public golf. And I find it interesting because there are a lot of times where um, you start to think about destination golf, and some places that you might not think of right off the top of your head are actually really good destination golf locations for the public. And so Golf Digest did this really interesting article in February of this year where they actually ranked by state the top 10 states for essentially public golf courses, destination public golf courses in the country. And AQ mentions Michigan there. Michigan was actually tied for second on Golf Digest's list for states in the country for public golf destination. They were tied for second with California. They actually had Wisconsin number one. So it's funny. The Midwest is not talked about a ton for destination golf, but the Midwest, Michigan, Wisconsin as well. There are some really, really good tracks up there and some good options for if you're doing trips. If you go, do the Erin Hills and Kohler trip up in Wisconsin, there's a bunch of stuff like that. And I'm going to hit on some of these courses that are mentioned in this Golf Digest article from February. We'll post it in the show description afterwards for you guys to check out. It's a really good article. It's got the top 10 by state. I'm not going to give away too many secrets on that. I want you to go read it. And then within each state, they give you courses within that state ranked as well, and how that state, within that state, those courses. And so some really good options in there. Michigan was number 2. Um, so for those of you who don't know, or those of you who haven't watched the Air Raid Hour a lot on the Cover One network that we do for for our normal football show, I live in North Carolina, right? So I'm not as familiar with the Western New York golf scene. I played Harvest Hill. That's the only course I played in Western New York. I live in North Carolina, and one of the destinations that has to be talked about, obviously in light of this year, got a lot of attention in past years as well, is the Pinehurst area in North Carolina. And when people think about Pinehurst, sometimes they think about, oh, Pinehurst number 2, because that's where you play the US Open. But there's a reason it's number 2. It's because there's 10 courses now that are associated with the Pinehurst Resort, not to mention a ton of other courses around the area like CCNC, Country Club of North Carolina. You got Mid Pines and Pine Needles, who have both hosted. Pine Needles has hosted the U.S. Women's Open in the past. Mid Pines is the sister course there down in Southern Pines. These are all courses you can go play in the Pinehurst area. They're public. It's going to cost you some dough, but if you do these stay and play packages, you can really get your money's worth in the Pinehurst area. It is certainly probably the area I'm most familiar with as far as recommending for a destination golf outing. But you have to do it once, at least once. The way they package it up and the way they kind of give you the stays at the resort, they give you meals, breakfast and steak dinners. You get to play whatever course combinations you want of the Pinehurst courses. Most people tend to do number 2 and number 4. Those are the most well known. Number 10, the newest one, there is also really popular right now. They also have a par 3, little 9-hole par 3 course that you can play an unlimited amount of times called the Cradle. Go one day and you pay one rate. You can just run through it as many times as you want, and it's pretty sweet. Someone get this man to go. Yeah, you guys, you're gonna have to do that Western New York show without me. But Aaron Quinn has talked about Grover Cleveland a bunch to me in texts and other things, and I'm pretty sure he's done some design work for them as well. But I'm gonna start there. I've been there, and I would say it's worth it. It's worth the trip. It's fairly easy to get to. You can fly into Raleigh. It's only about an hour drive from Raleigh if you go into Raleigh, RDU. And it's just really easy to get there, and just it's not a hassle at all. So that's for me my first one that I wanted to talk about, and I have a few others, but I'll toss it back to you, Kep, now to give the viewers a chance to hear about some places you've been.
Sure thing. Yeah. Well, one of the places that I wanted to highlight that I've been to is Myrtle Beach, which, again, we're, I guess, back down in the Carolinas, South Carolina this time. But Myrtle Beach, some people call it the golf capital of the world. It's got over 80 courses in a 60-mile stretch of Carolina coastline. And, I barely scratched the surface, to be real with you. But it's a nice area. It's fun for families. There's a lot of other stuff to do aside from golf. When you're done, you can go and there's a bunch of great go-karting randomly, some really cool go-kart tracks down there. There's a beach right there, obviously. But I actually have a couple pictures of some of the courses to share. So let me get that going real quick. Sorry, Dave, just give me 1 second here.
Yeah, I'll
switch it over.
And yeah, while Kep's bringing that up, I mean, Myrtle Beach, I've been multiple times as well. It's only a 3-hour drive from where I live. Stay and play packages there galore. The one thing that you gotta just, because as Kep said, there's tons and tons of courses. The one thing you just gotta watch out for when you go there is course conditions can vary quite a bit at Myrtle Beach, depending on sort of when you go, and also even courses that are, for the most part, in good condition year round. You really got to watch out for their aeration schedules and things like that when you go, because it really changes the experience down there. So the good news is there's a lot of options. So you can typically find something that, if one course maybe you wanted to play is getting punched or something, or it's maybe not in the best shape, you can usually find something else as well. So just another little pointer there if you're heading to Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, good point. So I mean, TPC Myrtle Beach is a really famous one, of course. Um, it's a beautiful course. I think you've played there before, right, David?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I didn't get a chance to play this one. Another one that you had suggested um, to me a while back when I was heading down there was Arrowhead.
Yeah.
Um,
Arrowhead's
I-
good. They have 3 9s, I believe, from what I recall, usually in good shape. And usually Arrowhead will be a course that is a very nice combination of conditions and price point. Like it's not going to kill you on the wallet.
I did get a chance to go to Pine Lakes, which is a really nice course.
Yeah, the granddaddy, as they call it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a really certainly if you're planning a trip down there, it's one to try to get in. You know, it's just the the layout was really cool. There's lots of they use this natural waterway a lot, kind of going back and forth. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but we're just going to ignore those.
Mhm.
Um, and Myrtlewood was another one. Myrtlewood has two
Mhm.
courses. I got to play the Pine Hills course and actually had a chance. I actually was scored my best round ever at that course. But yeah,
Nice.
it's another really nice one you can see here. That again, they're using uh, these natural waterways and just a really nice design. Um, yeah,
So while continuing on the theme of, I guess, of South Carolina, that's a perfect transition for me to talk a little bit about a few other locations down the East Coast, one in South Carolina, one in Georgia. South Carolina, Hilton Head Island, probably people are familiar with that. It's where Harbor Town Golf Links is, where they play the RBC Heritage, another public course that you can get on. Depending on when you go. In the summer, it's usually cheaper. Afternoon, obviously, it's going to be cheaper. But within Hilton Head Island as a destination, really great for families. You can bring your whole family there. Tons of stuff to do in Hilton Head. They got the beach, restaurants, everything. And then there's a bunch of other courses there as well, designed by Tom Fazio. He's a big architect down in the southeast area. There's Palmetto Dunes, there's Shipyard. There's a bunch of courses in the Hilton Head area that if you're going to go down, obviously I would recommend, if you can, you got to play Harbor Town at least once. Worth it probably for the last 2 or 3 holes alone. Conditions are typically great. Clubhouse is awesome. You can go into the locker room, all that kind of cool stuff when you're there. And they have trolleys and stuff that'll take you right into Harbor Town if you're staying in Hilton Head around the Sea Pines area. So not just Harbor Town, but also Palmetto Dunes and some others that I mentioned. So um, Hilton Head is a great location if you're trying to kind of go somewhere with family. As you kind of continue down the coast into Georgia, Sea Island Resort is a really nice place you can go as well. 3 courses there, including the Seaside course. A lot of the tour pros actually um, sort of home base around there. Davis Love, home bases there, among others. Super nice facilities, 3 courses. They have a lodge resort on site. Another good place for families. They have beach there as well, different types of accommodations. They also have shuttles that'll take you all around. And they also have this cool putting green that's called like the Driftwood putting course. And it's like an 18 hole. I wouldn't call it mini golf because it's on an actual green and it's massive, and they have flags set up with that are numbered, and the flags have these little cool cup holders on them so you can kind of like bring your drinks along as you're doing it. They have waiters and stuff that will come right out to you on the putting green and serve you. So Sea Island, a place I've been, a place I really want to get back to, maybe a candidate for me for my 40th as a golf destination trip. It's a little far for me. It's about a 6-hour drive from where I am in North Carolina, but so worth it. It's a sweet place. So another couple places down the East Coast that I would definitely highly recommend. And one place that and we should be talking about places we want to go as well. I want to get to Kiowa at some point as well down there in South Carolina. A couple of friends of mine have been there. Really, really had nothing but good things to say about Kiowa. And then as you get kind of down even further, like down into Florida, another really good destination place that I'm trying to get to that I've had a lot of people mention to me, have been here from my club and have recommended it as well for a destination for my 40th, is Stream Song. And you probably saw some commercials on that over the last couple of weeks, maybe as you're watching the golf tournaments in Florida. 3 courses there, accommodations all on site, food all on site, and that's some place that that I really want to get to. And if you look at the top courses on the list within Florida on that Golf Digest article that we're going to post to the show description, Stream Song makes the list. And for that to make the list in Florida, where we know there's just tons and tons of golf, to me speaks volumes. So Stream Song is definitely a place down the East Coast that I would want to get to at some point.
Yeah, that perfectly tees up the next place that I wanted to talk about, which is Southwest Florida, the Naples area, where that's where I did a 40th birthday trip with my friends from college earlier this year. There are a whole bunch of nice courses in that area. 2 of them that I wanted to highlight for you guys, Old Corkscrew, which is a Jack Nicklaus signature design. It's just a beautiful course. It's a tough course. When I showed up and talked to, the guys, the starter, and they were basically telling me, leave the driver in the bag today.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it really, like, there's a lot of tight fairways and just some really cool, this is one of the most beautiful holes, I thought. It's just a great spot to work on your approach, and you've got just these huge bunkers, a lot of water, and just really challenging all around. But it's a beautiful course. It's set back into a preserve near a town called Estero, and you're out there. There's no houses around. It's just it's a really beautiful setting, and highly
That's awesome.
recommend. Yeah. This was I highly recommend it. Like, if you're going to make it down to Southwest Florida, this should be at the top of the list in terms of courses you should try to hit. It's semi-private. You can definitely get public tee times, and it's worth it for sure. The other course that I was really impressed by is actually a redesign. This is Old Corkscrew, but the former Raptor Bay, which this is it here. It's now called Salt Leaf Golf Preserve, and it's right.
Nice.
It's a man. This is another one that's like you're not. Yeah, you're not playing in an area where there's people living. Like, you're really kind of surrounded by preserve. There's this is preserved wetland. There's the bay over there is one of, I believe it's Florida's first preserved water body of water. I'm not sure exactly what the terminology was that I read when I was reading up on the course, but it's such a nice setting. And they just reopened in the fall. So, I mean, everything is just in beautiful condition. This is their signature hole. This is the second hole. It's a drivable par 4. It is, yeah, I mean, we didn't have anyone in our group that drove the green, but a couple of guys were able to get it up pretty close. I took I took the safe route because I don't have that long shot, that long drive. But man, it was a cool challenge to see. It kind of wraps around these. They do an amazing job on the redesign of this course, with working in natural features. Like they don't have any traditional bunkers. Like, anything you see here is a natural sandy area. They built up these the sides to kind of give you more of a challenge, but sometimes, depending on where they were, like, there's a example here where it's along the fairway. You would see shots, if somebody hit a slice or something into this, you might actually get a kick back out into
Nice.
the rough. But
Just wouldn't want to be blocked out by that right there.
there were some shots where you had no choice but to kind of just take your medicine and kick it out to the fairway, because there's no getting over. Like if you're on this side of it, there's no getting
No
over
way.
it.
No way.
But yeah, just a really, really nice spot. It's Estero Bay, Florida's very first aquatic preserve. That's what
Nice.
I was trying to get out earlier. But it was designed by 4-time major champion Raymond Floyd, and his trademark is kind of the embrace of natural habitat, which I think really he did a great job on this course of incorporating that and just making it a beautiful experience. So that's Salt Leaf Golf Preserve. If you're going to go down, Old Corkscrew and Salt Leaf were my two favorites. We played 6 courses while we were there, and there's a whole bunch of nice courses, but those two were special.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really like the that sort of natural look, because as we, as Kev, like where I play all the time, it's just it's in a neighborhood. I'm surrounded by tons of houses. There's OB everywhere. Like it would be nice to play somewhere where there's just like nothing but nature surrounded. KRC says, great suggestion. Golf trips are the best. Pennsylvania has some sweet spots. Old Stonewall's great for a 2-day trip. Yeah, and I've heard Pennsylvania has some really nice spots as well. As we kind of continue down sort of, I guess, the East Coast and then going beyond just the United States here, I do want to give a quick shout out to the Emerald Reef Golf Club in Exuma, Bahamas, where I've been fortunate to go twice, and they do play a Corn Ferry event at that course. It's a Greg Norman design course, and there's, speaking of natural elements, they've kind of put 5 or 6 of the holes on that course out into one of like the jet, like the rock jettisons that come out into the ocean there. If you're looking to do like an adults only sort of something with your partner, something all inclusive, go down to Sandals, Emerald Bay, and the Emerald Reef Golf Course is there. My wife and I went a couple years after we got married. We liked it so much we went back again a couple years after that, and we typically like to go to new places. So for us to want to go back to that place as quickly as we did, I think speaks a lot to the quality of that course. And it's really sweet. I mean, for those 5 or 6 holes. So definitely recommend that. As far as like the last couple places on my sort of already been to list, I've been to Torrey Pines, went last year. Torrey Pines is really interesting to me as a destination, right? Because really the destination's La Jolla, San Diego. Torrey Pines in itself, as far as like the amenities around the course, are not like, you're not going to get country club feel from that. It is a municipal course. It is very much just off the main road through La Jolla. However, the course conditions and the views off those cliffs on the coast there are super awesome. And for you to be able to say like you played a US Open course and available to the public, it is pretty sweet. I would definitely recommend it if you're going out to the West Coast to San Diego and you have a chance to play Torrey Pines. Definitely do. That kind of wraps, I guess, the main places that I've actually been to. But then obviously we want to talk a little bit about places that we want to get to eventually.
For sure.
So Kev, like, let's just keep it to the United States for now, right? Like, what are some places in the US that you haven't been, that you maybe top 3 places that you want to get to for a golf destination, like in your lifetime, I would say?
Yeah, man, we have to kind of limit it, because if you go outside, I mean, there's all over the world, DP
Keep it to
World
3
Tour.
if you can. Keep it to 3.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, it's tough to have this conversation and not mention Pebble Beach and Spyglass, and that trip is certainly at the top of the bucket list for me when in terms of golf courses that I'd love to play. I try to watch as much of the Pro-Am at Pebble Beach every year as I can, because the course is so beautiful that like, watching golf is great, but when the course is as interesting as Pebble Beach is, it adds a certain level of entertainment value. So it would be so cool to play that course someday. It's tough, it's expensive to, you got to stay on site and everything, and but certainly would be at the top of, I think, of a lot of people's lists. Do you want to take turns? Do you want to jump
Yeah, we
in?
can take
Yeah.
turns. I mean, Pebble's gonna be on my list too, and my wife golfs, so I think I mentioned that in like the first show we had, but like my wife golfs, she keeps a handicap, all that. She wants to go to Pebble Beach as well. So I definitely think we can make it happen. Got to save some money because it is expensive. It's like several $100s per person to play Pebble Beach.
600 at least. Yeah.
Yeah, 600, and depending on like when you go, there could even be a price surge, or it, like, depending on when you play, like, it could vary, but you're going to gotta go and thinking you're going to be at least in that sort of $400 to $600 range when you're playing there, plus staying. But my wife really wants to kind of make it like a trip where we also do like winery type stuff as well. So we're going to try to maybe do like a little bit of that when we go. It's definitely near the top of my list. I don't know if it's number one, but it's in my top 3 for sure. Got to get there at some point and play Pebble Beach. And how about Jim Nance having that Pebble Beach hole in his backyard that he can practice on? That's pretty sweet. The replica hole. So that's that. I'll say for the first back and forth between you and me, like, we'll both put Pebble Beach on our list. So what's your next one?
So, and I'm not really thinking of this as like a ranking necessarily. These are places that
Not a ranking, just 3 in any order, right? Like, it
yeah,
doesn't matter. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, maybe kind of a dark horse here, but Sand Hills in Nebraska. I don't know if you're, I mean, I don't even know how famous this course is, but it's a beautiful looking course out, the rolling hills of, I mean, you kind of expect it to be super flat, but there's some terrain there, and it just looks like an amazing course. Something I read about, I can't remember even where, probably in a Golf Digest article or something, but it's it's kind of like out in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska, but it's one of those places that if you're somehow in the area, like on a big road trip or something, like crossing the country, like, put that in your map as a place to stop by, because it looks like it would be a really, really beautiful spot to spend a few hours.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one, but that that is definitely something that I need to take into consideration here. I guess for me, my next one on the list, and this is one that, like, I've heard some mixed things recently about it, but from what I've heard, when it's right, Bandon Dunes in Oregon, apparently is like one of the best destination places to go if you're doing like a trip with accommodations and things like that. I don't know a whole lot about the setup there, but everyone I talk to who's been there at some point has said, like, you have to find a way to get there at some point in your life, and I think it's like 1 to 2 years booked out. Like, you have to do it like that far in advance, but that is definitely a place, like, I'm keeping my eye on, and if I could somehow make it work at some point down the road here, like, I'd love to get out there. Obviously, for me to travel, really for us on the East Coast, because I think most of our viewers are on the East Coast here, or in Western New York. That's a haul, right, to get out to Oregon, and then it also, from what I've been told, is a fairly pretty penny. But the golf reviews I've heard at Bandon Dunes has been like second to none to almost anywhere in the country. So I'm going to put that on my list without knowing a whole lot about like the courses or what. It's more about just from word of mouth and just knowing a little bit about people I've talked to say, like, you've got to get there. Be interesting to see if any of our viewers have been there before to get their opinion on it. But I got to put that on my list for right now as well.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate what we've sort of mentioned this at the beginning of the show, but we want suggestions because I'm working to fill in this map of aspirational golf courses, and we want to hear where you guys have played, where what's the place that you want to play most. the Pacific Northwest you were just talking about with Oregon. I mean, the Seattle area has a couple of courses that look like they'd be amazing to play. Like this, I'm probably going to say this wrong, but Sahali, where the LPGA championship was this year. This just looks like a tremendous course with all these tight fairways in the woods. I don't know if you caught any of that event, but the course looked really, really beautiful up there in the Pacific Northwest. I don't have any, unfortunately, great pictures here you go. Here's the next one. And then, you can kind of get a sense of the fairway here. You see, some of these fairways were really, really narrow, which can present a challenge for sure. But at the same time, like, to just kind of play in a a pine forest like this, where it just looks like it would be really nice. And the other course in the Seattle area that I've heard is really nice is Chambers Bay, which again, just look at the setting of this place. If you're on YouTube, and if you're on the podcast, maybe head over to YouTube to see the pictures. But yeah, I mean, especially if you like that coastal feel. I mean, Chambers Bay, you're playing right along the water. So if like Pebble Beach is a place that sounds really interesting to you, I'd throw Chambers Bay on the list. And
you got to throw it on the list, right? U.S. Open course, definitely got to put it on that list.
And we're not going to talk. We're going to keep it to U.S. today, but there's some nice courses up in Canada for sure. If you're doing the Pacific Northwest, and I can't resist. I just heard Nate Geary just kind of tipped me off to Cabot Cliffs, so over in Halifax, I think, or Nova Scotia, I think it is. But this place looks incredible.
That must be a haul to get up there.
Yeah.
That looks awesome.
Yeah,
that looks awesome.
What's your next one, David?
I kind of gotta give some love to the Midwest here, right? My in-laws are from Wisconsin. My wife's parents are from Wisconsin. My father-in-law does a sort of golf trip every year that I haven't been invited to yet. Maybe one day I will be, with his friends, and they go up to Michigan and Wisconsin and play. And I think I want to do that sort of Kohler area destination at some point. There's a bunch of courses there in that area in Kohler that, and there's like sentimental meaning to me there as well, with like my wife's family being from there, and not necessarily Kohler, but being from the east coast side of Wisconsin, and kind of being in that Waukesha Kohler area. I mean, I would want to get up there and play like, Erin Hills or Whistling Straits or somewhere like that up there in Wisconsin. I think a Midwest golf trip would be sweet, because I play a lot in the South and in the Southeast, and even a lot of the destination places I've been to, like I mentioned, like Sea Island and Harbor Town, right? Like Harbor Town, the grass and the greens and all that are not all that dissimilar, are pretty similar to what I play every day at Prestonwood, right? It's Bermuda fairways, it's Bermuda greens. So I think playing up in the Midwest on different types of grass, different types of trees, right? Like it's a lot of pine trees down here, a lot of oak trees, like different types of trees. The setting I think would be really sweet, really scenic, and would remind me a little bit of sort of the course that I grew up playing in upstate New York and Dinsmore Golf Club. So I think for me, I'm going to put like a Midwest Kohler, Erin Hills, Whistling Straits type of area trip as my third one.
Cool. Yeah. Should we show people Dinsmore?
Yeah, you can show them Dinsmore if you want. That's the course I grew up playing. It's 18 holes. That's where my dad taught me how to play. That's where I got my first hole in one when I was 10 years old, 6th hole on the North course there, or the North 9, I should say. It's the North and South 9. But if there's some cool pictures, you can see like they probably have some cool pictures of like looking back up to the first tee from the from down on the bottom of the hill there. I mean, it's really kind of scenic. There's like that's a view from like the top of the clubhouse looking out onto the first hole there. It's just,
That
it's
guy
very
had fun.
sentimental to me. Yeah, that guy, there's a restaurant there and everything. So like, yeah, I mean, it's one of those places where I think if I go back now, I would probably um maybe not think it's like the like it's the third. I think if fun fact, I think it's the third oldest course in the United States. If
Oh
you look at
wow,
the Wikipedia page, something like that. It's like, yeah, it's very old, but it's also like, I don't know. It's where I grew up, and then where my dad taught me the rules and etiquette and all that. So it's a very kind of sentimental place for me. And if I ever get back up to where I used to live up there in the Statsburg Hyde Park area of New York, I would definitely try to make an effort to play there again.
cool. Yeah, I mean, it looks great. And I mentioned that we're going to do, um, we'll probably do a whole show on Western New York at some point, but real
Mhm.
quick, just want to highlight one course there because it's, I mean, this is such a nice area. And if I know that most of our listeners are probably already familiar. Looks like I don't even have it highlighted in here somehow. But, for anybody who is not in the area or is planning on visiting the area, Links at Ivy Ridge is just, uh, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful courses in the area. It's a link style course. You get that heather that they cut it back later in the year, but um, it's a really really cool design and layout, and you get this. Um, yeah, unfortunately, the pictures aren't as cool as I thought they would be, but um, certainly if you in Western New York you haven't played Ivy Ridge, that you absolutely should. If you're visiting, put it on the list. It's a beautiful spot.
Nice. And again, let's get some suggestions and the comments section if we can after the show. Go in to the show on YouTube, put in where you've been, recommendations, and wish list places like we've just done here today. So, should we segue now to talk a little bit of the state of our games as we head into kind of the middle of the summer here before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, it's a good idea. How have you been hitting them?
So the last time we did a show, I think I mentioned to you guys, been like battling. I'm having some demons, but I've also been like compensating for it in a way that's like a little bit unconventional. And I don't think what I'm doing right now is super sustainable necessarily, but it's been working for me the last 4 or 5 rounds out. I've had like probably my best 4 or 5 rounds of the season so far, the last 4 or 5 rounds out, just because of like this compensation I'm doing for a really just flawed swing I have at the moment. And it's like it's a weird mental state to be in right now for me because it's like I'm playing well in spite of like knowing that the swing that I have is like really flawed, and finding this way to compensate for it is like great, but it's like it's just a weird feeling, right? To feel like, okay, I'm pretty confident right now because I'm actually like hitting the ball well and I'm making good contact. But I also know like, is this gonna end up being how I play golf from here on out, or is this just kind of like a temporary thing until I really figure out what's wrong with my swing and I know what's wrong and like try to fix it. So it's a bit of a weird dynamic for me right now, but supposed to play tomorrow. It's not looking good here weather-wise in in the area I'm in North Carolina uh for tomorrow. So we'll see. And then I'm off to Charleston next week on vacation, but I'm not going to be playing any golf next week. Unfortunately, it's a family thing. And so yeah, I'm hoping that tomorrow's round I get it in because if not, it'll probably be another week or two, at least 2 weeks probably before I play next.
Yeah, it's been incredibly hot where I'm at. The last 2 weeks, it's been just above 90 consistently. So it's been tough to get. I've also been pretty busy with having family in town and going away for my father-in-law's birthday. So I haven't been able to play as much as I'd like to. I'm hoping actually to get 9 in today if I can, but
Mm.
um, sort of dealing with some of the same inconsistencies. It's like one day everything will be working except the drive, and off the tee,
Mhm.
I had a stretch of 2 or 3 rounds there where my driver was just completely not working. I think I talked about it here on the show, and I got that back. Actually, something that our friend Nate Geary said to me on the show, I went back and looked at. He told me that maybe I'm shortening my swing up, um,
Mhm.
and he might have been right. Or in trying to fix that, I fixed something else. I'm not sure, but I'll give him the credit that I kind of like focused on taking a proper backswing, and my drive has been back.
Mm.
But then the next round the putting just isn't there. It's kind of like getting everything to line up is tricky, but it's just always great to get out, and I'm hoping that the weather sort of lets up here soon, because we've got another week coming up here where it's good, like mid 90s. We've got a day that
Mhm.
it's going to be like 99 or something. It's too hot.
Yeah, I mean, like you're speaking to me. I mean, I played during the July 4th week, holiday week, and I played the day after July 4th here. It was 98 degrees and it feels like was 107 and it was humid. I mean, I will always have fun playing golf. Like no matter what. Like I can deal with the heat. I'm used to playing in the heat, but that was like borderline where it was almost like it was tough, man. It was really tough being out there, and just the humidity made it that much worse because, like, you just your hands are wet, your gloves wet.
Yeah,
You never feel like you have a great grip on the club. Mentally, it gets to you, right? It starts affecting sort of like your swing. You tend to get quicker, and like it just you got to really be like mentally with it to play in that type of heat, and like conversely in cold conditions as well, but especially in the heat, like it can get to
yeah.
you. So
I prefer
yeah,
cold personally. Like I'll
I'll
play
take
those.
heat. I'll take heat.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I'm from New York, obviously, but I'm not a cold weather guy. So like I will definitely take heat over cold. My wife's the opposite. She's born in Wisconsin, pretty much lived in North Carolina her whole life, but she will prefer the cold over the heat. So we're a little bit opposite there.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you want to get into? Should we talk about the Scottish Open at all before we wrap up?
Why don't we just do a quick chat about like where things have kind of been in the golf world over the last couple weeks since we last did a show, and maybe like talk a little bit about the Open Championship. Scottish Open, obviously interesting. Rory's back playing for the first time since the US Open, famously took those couple weeks off because he said he had to get away for a bit. Scottish Open coming in is always like now becomes sort of the event prior to the Open Championship. But there have been some low scores on the PGA Tour over the last couple of weeks. We saw Davis Thompson last week shoot like what was it, 28 under at the John Deere, and earn his way into the Open. We see this guy Luke Clanton, who's an amateur, finish in the top 10 in back-to-back events on the PGA Tour, which is pretty crazy. And also played well in the U.S. Open, by the way. It's an interesting spot right now. Where things are headed. I feel like the Open is going to be it's going to be kind of anyone's game. Like I don't know. Like Scotty Scheffler is obviously going to go in as the favorite, and probably Rory again as well, but Bryson has that US Open win. Um I don't know. Like it's going to be fun. I think for me it's kind of the most fun major to watch. Just for me personally, I don't necessarily know that it's like I'd rank it first as far as like if I'm gonna rank the majors, but I think it's like I think it's kind of the most fun to watch for me. So I don't know. Interesting spot for golf over the last few weeks. Seen some new names pop up and guys kind of like push towards that towards those spots for the last few spots in the Open.
Yeah, it's a different sort of course. It's a different sort of challenge, and different sort of setting. It's just I see why you like the Open as much as you do. Um, Yeah, Ludwig Oberg is threatening, right? He's at the top of the leaderboard this week. He's been consistently right there. He's as much of a chance as anyone outside of Scotty, obviously, to make that push and get the win. And seeing that sort of one, and I don't even know what the odds are, shot that he had yesterday where his ball
Oh,
landed
where it
right
hit
on
that
top of
ball?
another
Yeah.
ball. Yeah, that was wild. Rough break for both of those guys because they were both great
Well, I
shots.
mean, but I thought the rule was if you hit a ball from for Oberg, I think you can't replace it, but the other guy can replace his ball, right? If he knows where it was. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure that's the rule.
you'd probably know better than me, to be honest.
Like Oberg couldn't, like he just has to go where his ended up. But the other guy
Mm.
who was on the green, if he reasonably knows where his ball was, I'm pretty sure he's allowed to replace it.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, because he got screwed. That guy did.
Oh
I mean, they
man,
both
for
they
sure.
both they both did really, but like
Yeah,
the guy already
yeah.
on the green really got screwed.
uh,
um, any last thoughts before we head out here?
I don't think so, man. It's really cool to go. I think at some point, maybe we need to do an international version of this sort of golf trip destination type of show because
Mm.
there's a lot of really beautiful courses around the world that to talk about. I'll just say again, we'd love to get your recommendations because we could do an entire viewer driven show of different course recommendations because there's just so many great courses to play when you really look at it. I mean, um, it's just I mean, there's no shortage of great golf out there.
Yeah, there really isn't. And look, like we fully understand we've only talked about a handful of places today. This is why we want to
Right.
get your input. Like we're not intentionally leaving things out. We're not doing that. It's just like there's so much to cover on this topic. So we do appreciate you guys tuning in and we do appreciate you putting those comments in the comments section. So guess that'll pretty much do it for us today. For Chris Kepner, I'm David Tilton, and thank you for joining us today.